Welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, and we're going to bring you an exciting show today because we're approaching Valentine's Day, and I'm sure many of you couples out there are trying to find the perfect gift to share with each other. What if you can go beyond just sharing Valentine's on one specific day out of the year, but can learn day by day how you can increase your sexual energy as well as your love energy to not only improve each other's lives as a couple, but individual lives as well. That would sure make the world a more exciting place, wouldn't it? On the Beyond 50 radio program today, our guests have helped more than 10,000 couples worldwide to be able to do this very thing. They have created the institute known as the Tantra Nova Institute, which is located in Chicago, Illinois. They're internationally renowned workshop leaders and relationship and intimacy coaches, as well as certified Tantra yoga teachers. They have also produced the best-selling DVD series, Creating Intimacy and Love, and were featured on Showtime's documentary series, Sexual Healing, as well as the Emmy Award-winning NBC show, Starting Over. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guests, Freddie Zentel and Elizabeth, who's joining us here on the program to talk about their book, Sexual Enlightenment. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us on the show, Daniel.
Oh, absolutely. You know, what I like about how you start off in this book is there's, a lot of people that go out searching for love or the ideal of love from the outside, but it really starts with inside of us. But we start off with an imprint by what we learn from our parents. Tell us about that.
And society at large. With the work we've been doing at the Tantra Nova Institute over the last 13 years, couples and individuals, working with them all over the world, they come with specific things they want to work on, clear, or find out more about. And as you said, there's stories from the past, and usually it has something to do with their sexual selves. Not much in this life doesn't. I mean, if you think that none of this would be experienced for us if we hadn't come through that experience, the sexual experience. And what makes this unique, what these practices are, and what's unique about them, is learning a new dimension of our sexual selves. I mean, forever we've been procreating, creating life, in the last 100 or so years recreating with the development of contraceptives. And what we're teaching is how to co-create with this life force energy, which at its core is creative, it creates life, and it's pleasurable. When it shows up, it's pleasurable. And when you start bringing consciousness to it, as we teach it with developed observer mind, which we can talk a little bit more about later, and the awareness of the parasympathetic breathing, belly breath, with the aroused and unaroused life force or sexual energy, creativity and pleasure start showing up in areas of life that seem completely unrelated to sex in the simple process of living. As opposed to living in that, rationalized suffering mind, well, I hate my job, what am I going to do? We're more intimately connected to the feeling that thought creates and creating more of a, like, what do I want? And so we look either at what we like about the work and listen from that place, or we create, as an example, work that's more fulfilling. And that same process happens in relationship, and we've seen it with people's lives and how things shift from bringing consciousness in this seemingly unrelated area.
Any thoughts on that, Dr. Elsbeth?
Yes, I'm also thinking of your listenership that's beyond 50. So particularly at that time, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, how can we imbue our alive self? We are no longer 20 years old, because when we are 20, many things just work on their own, both physically and, being turned on or turned off or whatever. So we are both, Freddie is in his late 50s, I'm in my early 60s. So the opportunity to learn practices that allow me to re-enlivening myself over and over again, emotionally, physically, sexually, sensually, spiritually, and then, of course, bringing that connection with myself to my relationship with my beloved. So I was very fortunate to be introduced to these practices in my early 30s and then delved deeply into learning more about it and experiencing that opportunity in my late 40s. And it has altered my life so tremendously that I shifted my career totally from being an international management consultant to now, having created with Freddie Santal this work together where we share how to create love and intimacy and lasting fulfillment in life and relationship.
Mm-hmm. I liked when I was reading in your book how you had brought up author Napoleon Hill, and I had remembered when I had first heard this in the book Think and Grow Rich. He talked about harnessing sexual energy for that creative life force to be able to achieve our dreams and our goals, and I thought, that's something you don't typically see in a book that helps you to perhaps, achieve wealth or whatever it is that you're trying to pursue. Usually when people think about sex and sexual energy, it's just about that. It's about the physical act of it, of basically expressing love. But as you were talking about here in Sexual Enlightenment, it goes beyond that.
Yeah. And, he was on to something a long time ago. And even before he wrote that, there was a fascination and a magic about this life force energy when you think, again, it was creating life before we as thinking Homo sapiens were aware of our own existence. So in creating, say, a business, and it's all energy, and, science is proving that out now, and saying the same thing as spirituality, is that it's all one. So if you're creating a business, it's an energetic, it's a thought, it's a results in a real world sense. So in sexual energy, it creates life, and it's pleasurable and it's creative. So those elements, when you bring them into a creative thinking around your business, what happens is you have pretty much a successful opportunity to create something new and different. So tapping in consciously as we teach it, it seems completely unrelated to something to do with business. But when we bring consciousness to the sexual, unlike the typical place we usually go when we're in the sexual, and I'm not making it right or wrong in terms of a lusting place, a selfish love, or a creating, new life, or recreating with, again, contraceptives or so on. This is a new dimension of working with and learning to use the sexual energy in a new way. It's new and it's old, So, again, he was talking about it then, and we're talking about it now. And when people start doing these practices, they get results in a very real-world sense. We had the opportunity about 5 years ago to work with a group of professionals, business people, who really got great results from this work.
We're working with the Young Presidents Club down in Australia, and not only there, it happens in our workshops all the time that people may come here to, I want to feel more intimate with my partner, or, want to clear something to bring the beloved into my life that I desire so much. And yes, that will happen, that opens up. And furthermore, it's an availability of that creative self that shows up, and creative self in the sense of creating ourselves, our life, how we feel, what, like Tantra Nova for me is a total creation out of clearing my sexual life with energy and then inviting Freddie into my life. So it's pretty phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting as you read in this book here that the tools that you empower people with are things we already have. It's just sometimes a matter of understanding or knowing they're there, and then the next step being able to use those effectively.
Yes, exactly. We call it a rediscovery. This is not something that people are not familiar with once we introduce it to them. For instance, if I'll give you an experience of one of the practices that's foundational in learning to work with our sexual energy. So it's a parasympathetic breathing or belly breath. So if you just play with me along here, any of your listeners that are listening, if they are sitting in a chair, just uncross their legs and just know that they're here for a few moments to listen to this. And let your thinking come, let it go. Don't give a lot of energy to whatever thoughts may come. Bring your awareness and your consciousness into following your breath, coming into your nose, down your trachea, into your lungs, extending into your belly like a big balloon on your inhalation, letting the thoughts come and go. Really extend the belly like you're playing Santa Claus, and flattening the belly as you exhale, back up and out, all in your own pace, depth, and rhythm. Breathing into the nose, letting the thoughts come and go down the trachea, into your lungs, extending into your belly like a big balloon on your inhalation. Exhaling back up and out, all in your own pace, depth and rhythm. And just one more time without me speaking.
I feel better already.
You know, and that was just 3 breaths, Daniel. So imagine
Right.
if you bring that kind of stillness to the sexual energetic with yourself and with a partner, it becomes a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's new. And I'm not saying that's the only dimension that we can experience as sexual, like, oh, I can't have the quickies in the morning, or I can't go out on a date, or just, whatever. No, all of that's good too. This is a new dimension of learning to work with and use this energy to focus and bring awareness and aliveness in other areas of life. It really is systemic.
Yeah. So also just to make the connection, how is this related to sexual energy, and particularly when it turns into aroused energy? It's that coming to stillness, which allows us to commune with ourselves and to feel ourselves, be present to our thoughts, watching the thoughts coming and going, and being in the present moment allows for intimacy to arise, intimacy first and foremost with oneself, out of which I open up to be more intimate or intimately connected with my beloved. So when we are in that space of listening, of being present, nothing has to be different. It is as it is right now. I'm open. If I bring this then to my arousing energy, of course that all needs to be practiced, I want to say. It's not, we never start out there. We start first out with listening to our non-aroused energy. We call it the subtle energy that shows up most of the time, just like right now where we are sitting and listening. Then when we bring that awareness of the breath, the belly breath, to our aroused energy, we can move that aroused energy all the way up from the sexual center into the heart center that resides in the middle of the chest, all the way up to the third eye, our consciousness, and back down again. And in that circulation of energy, including aroused energy, we imbue our body, because it's like, fueling our body, it's fueling our emotional being and embellishing our creations, our thoughts, our intentions, our wishes. Wow, it's pretty magical.
Mm-hmm. It seems that when you take a look at, especially in American society, that love and sexuality seem to be more of a commodity more than an exercise that can be practiced to make our lives greater. Should we decide that's the direction we want to run. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a powerful energy, and for millennia it's been vilified, and most of us, when we come to a consciousness around it, there's an enshrouded shame, fear, and guilt, and old story there. So, the marketeers know it's powerful and it's pleasurable, and people want it, and so trying to repress it is what's kind of caused this critical mass of politicians being caught with their hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, metaphorically and literally. And the entertainers breaking up because of some infidelity, or you see breakdowns everywhere. Instead of saying, well, this is like food, so let's eat with a balanced diet. And I think that this is becoming more and more a time that this awareness is to be more and more in the forefront. People are really starting to wake up, and with the information dissemination highway of the internet, shows like yourself and other things that are out there that are available to people, they can learn and they can listen and they can, expand their thinking and their possibility,
Yeah, also what you spoke about, Daniel, being a commodity, it's the sexual is so much used in advertising and commercials and in innuendos because it speaks to that pleasure feel, that is so seductive, so attractive. And in that moment of orgasm, we actually don't think. The French call it the little death, because we are just in that orgasmic energy. We cannot feel an orgasm and be in our head. It's not possible. Usually it's just for the male, it's like 3 to 5 seconds, unless he learns to sustain that energy and keep breathing into the energy and moving the energy up and down. For the woman to open up herself to her, to reawakening her energy to her goddess self, and again, it's all about the flow. So when we bring consciousness to it, then we can really play and create with that energy to be supported versus, just using it as a utilitarian means.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, too, Elsbeth, since we're on that topic, too, about how we, I guess, commercialize sexuality is the fact that women over the many centuries have been sexualized objects and not truly seen as what they are, the feminine energy that we all could use. Tell us or expand on that if you could.
Yes, so it has also something to do with what you are speaking about, the objectivation of women, with that we are wired differently. It has something to do with testosterone and estrogen, and that males are actually much more affected by visual impacts with respect to feeling and including feeling aroused. Women are not as, the visual is not as important. We are not wired like that. It's much more the feeling of our body, the feeling connected with our love center. There's nothing good or bad about it, these differences. It's just there are differences. So what I found so helpful in the tantric and the Taoist practices, what I learned there, is to integrate the feminine and the masculine within and then in relationship. So with respect to relationship, it's really crucial that males learn more about listening to themselves, which is a feminine, we could call a feminine trait, like a yin trait versus a yang trait, so that he can be also more heart-centered, so that he can listen to himself more fully and then also to the partner, because in the listening, the feminine energy opens up and she doesn't feel just like being an object, being looked at, but the training is totally missing. No boy gets trained either when he is in primary school or as an adolescent, leave alone adult men, being trained in how to listen to themselves. And Freddie, can you play a little bit on that with respect to emotions for men? And
Right. So for men, we start feeling in our sexual center, and that's like our emotional expression of all of that sexual energy. We don't often start with the tender heart where the woman starts, and that's often the misunderstanding where we're misunderstood as just lusting for ourselves and so on. And we are socialized to believe that we don't have any control of it. We've got to ejaculate, and it's just the way that we are as men, and there's some truth to that. And there is the possibility that we can transcend that which has been the truth for so long through bringing consciousness to this energy. And in that, we start to integrate the masculine-feminine dynamic. Because at the beginning, when we're zygotes in the womb, we're androgynous, and then as it's decided we're man or woman, as adults we have aspects of testosterone and estrogen in our system, and as we get older, the whole thing reverses itself. Men grow breasts and women grow hair on their faces. So what we're advocating is how can we, as adults, grounded in whatever gender we are or believe to be integrated in the masculine and feminine dynamic as it expresses itself socially, emotionally, energetically. And there are distinctions that when we bring that balance, shift the way that we listen and the way that we share and the way that we get each other.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, too, when you think about men in their younger years, as you were pointing out earlier, in grade school and moving into high school, that we tend to look at sex and sexuality as a way of a conquest. I need to lose my virginity, or otherwise I'm less in the face of my peers, and so it becomes a conquest. And you realize, and in reading your book, Sexual Enlightenment, you begin to realize that those kinds of attitudes carry over into other areas of your life.
Yes.
Because, and just to note on that, I'll give you an example. I remember years ago, there was a woman who had approached me that we had worked with, and I had known her for some time, and she had mentioned, that she was pining after me as she did. And I never really got that signal from her, and I thought, well, this would be interesting. So I said, okay, well, I would be interested in going out with you and getting to know you. And so as I took that step, then all of a sudden she says, well, really, I've got to let you know, though, that my heart is really screwed up because she's been hurt before. So now all of a sudden at one point she's saying that she's interested, but now on the other hand she's saying, I've got to be cautious. And I thought to myself, well, first of all, I don't know how far this is going to go. Probably not very far at all, because she's approaching life with a cautiousness and a fear. And I wondered how many other areas in her life that might extend to. And that's kind of one of those things that jogged my memory in your book, and I was thinking, wow, this is some pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. And many people have, stories around what has happened for them in the sexual energetic, because, again, we're more open, loving, vulnerable, and receptive, and oftentimes things do not work out the way that we would like them to have worked out or perceived or wished. And then we're disappointed, and then typically our ego, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's, so I've got to shut that down. And it's a Machiavellian world. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and we are evolving. So I do feel the glass is half full. I'm not being pessimistic when I say that. I'm saying that to mean that we are in an evolving phase, and we have been and continue to be. And getting this energy, again, as I said earlier, that's been creating life before we were aware of our own existence. There is an intelligence. Whenever it shows up, and whenever creativity and pleasure show up, things start working. And when we bring consciousness to this energy, as we teach you to do, or teach people to do, that starts showing up in your life.
Tell us about the kiss that releases endorphins. I'm sure that our listeners would hopefully be able to take this practice at Valentine's Day as they receive and give their gifts. But this could go above and beyond just that.
Okay, but you want to be really clear what you want to affect with it?
Well, when you think about releasing endorphins, obviously, it's that real good feeling pleasure that we feel, that euphoria that makes us feel, it's like the beginning when you're really in love with someone for the first time. You're floating in the air, in the world. It just seems everything that you want to do is just possible.
Yeah. And this is a great practice to remind the body and the spirit and the heart of that when we do this particular kiss. And also for your listeners to know that this practice is one of 10 free practices we offer on our website. Just if they want to go there at the end of the show and pick that up on our homepage, www.tantranova.com. And that practice, which Freddie and I do to this day, is done where the beloveds bring their lips together and in a way so that the man suckles on the upper lip of the woman, and she suckles on his lower lip. And for the upper lip of the woman to be suckled, there is a connection, a meridian connection, nerve connection down to the yoni. Yoni means sacred space or the sexual center of the woman. So it's like getting that tingly feeling by being kissed on the other lip. Of course, we also want to breathe together and be in synchronicity, which deepens the connection within and then with each other. And we recommend to do that kind of a kiss many, many times, lots of times. And can be done when we say goodbye to each other, when we greet each other, when we connect before we go to sleep, or in preparation for lovemaking. It's a great way of enlivening oneself and each other.
Mm.
Somehow, Elsbeth, I knew when I posed that question you were going to be the one to answer it.
Really?
I caught you. and just to let the listeners know, I'll tell you why. I remember that in the beginning of your book, Sexual Enlightenment, that you talked about the way that you learned about sexuality and love. It just didn't seem so happy, but, you know, as you evolved over the years, and of course, you know, that the two of you are together with this, you know, wonderful program that you have for couples and singles, is that you really begin to open up like a lotus flower, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and also, you know, Daniel, I always was sexually curious, even considering the upbringing I went through and the sternness of my father and, you know, not having room for me to blossom and as a young woman. And looking back at, you know, given his upbringing, no wonder, of course. I can see this now as an adult. I couldn't see that as a, you know, teenage girl. And there was a lot of suffering for me around that. So there was one really silver lining here, that I was sexually curious and I explored, you know, to the chagrin of my parents. And that also, I think, ultimately brought me to exploring into the tantric practice. And then, of course, later on, meeting Freddie Santal, because at that point I had declared that I want to bring a tantric partner into my life, someone who would be very curious about learning or already practicing. And there I went and, you know, attracted Freddie Santal, who had been practicing these practices since his 15th birthday.
Boy, Freddie, don't you have it good.
Well, you know, it sometimes requires some explanation, you know, when the woman goes, well, how come you aren't, you know, ejaculating? How come, what's wrong with me? And, you know, and it's like, well, you know, you explain and then you get them on board. But, yeah, I feel very blessed that I was exposed to this early in life and continue to expand my knowledge and practice of this sexual energetic as a conscious doorway to creating more aliveness in my life in areas that are not seemingly related to sex. But I feel the work that we're doing here at Tantra Nova Institute has been an integration of all the things that I love to do in all the different jobs. I taught school, I was in the business world, I was in the music world, and this is a combination of all those things that I loved. And I do feel that everyone's got something very authentic to offer in their life, and that many of us don't get to it. You know, we kind of skirt around it. And if we lived like this is all there is, we wouldn't waste a moment. And that's my hope in sharing this work, that I inspire people to not waste a moment and keep being happy.
And Daniel, did you see the clips of Freddie Santal's show, one-man show?
I haven't had a chance to see that, no.
Anyway, because that's another way how Freddie shares the opportunity of sexual enlightenment. The one-man show is called Sexual Enlightenment. There are clips on the theater page on our website, and he brings the whole message, you know, in a theatrical, entertaining way. It's not a workshop, and sometimes it's really relieving. I can just sit there and watch, be entertained, be reminded of my own story, yet just bringing some lightness to it by him telling his story from the age of 5 to the present time. You may want to take a look at it. Some parts are hilarious.
I'm singing and drumming and telling stories all around demystifying sex, love, and intimacy. So as I'm telling my story, people are listening to their own.
Well, one thing I can certainly say to the listeners about your book, Sexual Enlightenment, is that, you know, being in this business of media, I have done hundreds of interviews when it comes to relationships and love. And the reality is a lot of the stuff that's out there seems to repeat the same things, making the assumption that you're a couple who's probably running into troubled waters and wants to either make changes or decide whether you want to continue together as a couple. But in this book, you address couples, but also people who are on their own as well. Yeah,
and whether you're a couple or an individual doing this work, you're still doing your own work. So, yeah, we have couples and individuals, and it's always gender balanced. And we have gay and lesbian, and everybody has come to do our work. It doesn't matter. It's just about getting. We could teach these practices, Daniel, to nuns and priests. If you were vowed to celibacy, it's about getting your own sexual energetic in a way that is enlivening and deepening your experience in this life.
And I know that you also talk about in the book, and we're going to save this for people to visit your website to find out more about this, but how you can begin to exercise and strengthen your love muscle. And what I'd like you folks to do, because we're just about out of time, is if you could give out your website information for our listeners, that would be great.
Yeah, www.tantranova.com. TANTRANOVA.com. And all the free practices are there, the 10 free practices, creating intimacy and love. The book Sexual Enlightenment is available there. Home study program, both available in hard copy and downloadable. So go there and cruise around. And, of course, lots of workshops, both one-day workshops and 3-day workshops. And we teach at Esalen in California twice a year. We are going to be on a Hawaiian cruise in May, cruising the islands. So
back out at Krippalo in Massachusetts at the end of the year, we always bring in that program there.
So, Daniel, you may want to consider joining us.
I may want to consider doing that. It sounds like it will be a lot of fun to definitely open up and just be more of who I am. Very exciting stuff. I want to thank both of you for being on the program today.
Thank you, Daniel.
I want to have you do this. Any final thoughts that you can share with our listeners as a Valentine's gift?
Keep living and loving.
I like it. Thank you again for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you.
Again, the book is Sexual Enlightenment. Our guests today, Elizabeth Muth and Freddie Zental Weaver, and you can find out more about this as well by also visiting us at Beyond50Radio.com. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you again for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.